Hello, good morning, my friends. Hope you're doing really, really, really great today. I wonder how many others have had a bit of an emotional morning. Telling you, God is in this place this morning, and it's funny that sometimes you can't even explain what happens, but something comes over you in certain times with my worship morning music and getting the message ready as I was actually busy going through this. Just a weird, tearful emotion start heading over me. It wasn't sad, it wasn't happy, it was, I don't know what it was, but it was really good. And it's in moments like that where I really feel God touch me. And it's in moments like that where I really feel like I'm busy with the right thing. I'm doing something right. I'm getting something right. I don't know what it is. But to sit and randomly, you'll have to excuse me, but to sit and randomly have that happen to you is really something else. And I had a thought throughout this morning as well that what is it that stands out about me? What is it that stands out about you? When we shift our minds to the Bible and we start thinking of all the people that were in there, all the people that were written about, every time a name pops up, something specific about that person stands out. Well, that's the case for me at least. When I like when I think of Noah, everybody goes, "Yes, the ark." And I know the arc, but my mind shifted a little bit ever since that one moment where I realized one of the translations that says Noah had this unwavering faith in the Lord. So that's the thing that stands out for me. But you say Noah, people go ark. You think Abram, you think the father of all nations. Um, you think walking up the mountain, being obedient to the Lord. So his obedience, being obedient to the Lord to go sacrifice, willing to sacrifice his son for God. When you think Moses had leadership that he didn't know he had. He led God's people out of the Israelites. You think the 10 plagues. You think a lot of people go putting the staff down and parting the waters, leading people through the river. When oh man, when you think my favorite guy, when you think David. Well, every time I think David, and there's quite a few songs that mentions the specific one is dance like David danced or danced. Doesn't matter how you say it. But that's the thing. I want to dance like David danced. But he's described as a man. I think he's the only person in the Bible. Now that I quickly think about it, I might be wrong, but that is described as a man having a man after God's own heart. Right? Did I get it right? I can't think in this moment of anybody else that had that particular sort of statement. So that's actually what I'm about. Is what was specific that stood out about them. They each had their own story. Each story was different. They had something specific that stood out. You know, like as I said, the way David danced, and people always think David and they think David and Goliath, which is great because that's the other thing that stands out for me about David is the courage that he had, the attitude that he must have had to pitch up at this army and going, why are you people just sitting here? Get up, let's this thing insulting God's army over here, this person, guy, giant thing over here. And David just like, man, I have a picture of that. I would love to meet David when I get to heaven. I just want to see, just like, dude, thank you for being obedient. Thank you for running after Jesus. Even if he didn't even have Jesus back then yet. We know Jesus was there, but not in the way that we know Jesus came. Daniel also. Daniel, if you look at his friends that I spoke about yesterday, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, unwavering faith also. They didn't stop. They served God in spirit and in truth. They stood for the Lord. They stood firm. Daniel stood firm. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego got thrown in the fire. Daniel got thrown in the lion's den. When you hear Daniel, people think lion's den. When you think Esther, you think courage. Risking her life for her people, or for the Jewish people. Approaching a king, risking her life. Yeah, if you even think, you hear Mary, and instantly there are two Marys. But if you don't know about the other Mary, people will think the mother of Jesus. But what about it? Belief. Believing Gabriel when he came and he said, "You will bear the Son of God." Was it Gabriel? I got the right angel over here. Yes, yes, I got the right angel. But believing him, saying, "Oh, I'm gonna bear the Son of God." Wow. And the support, that she was present all the way to the end of his life. At the cross, she was there. If you think Paul, who was Saul, the first thing you think of is his Damascus moment. That's the first thing I think of. Is the moment he ran into Jesus on his way to Damascus to further persecute. I think he was on his way to get certain laws um, finalized or whatever the word is, but to put into play. And then Jesus met him and said, "Saul, why are you persecuting me?" He had this magnificent moment. And you think, and you might remember that he got blind there, and he had to meet that guy in what was that city, that close city? Was it actually Damascus? Could have been. I'm not sure now. I have my moments, but that also, what that guy's name? I can't remember that guy's name now. Terrible. That's terrible of me, Lord. I need to. Anyway, but you remember that, and then remember the transformation that happened. Then he became Paul. Then he became one of the most significant writers of the New Testament. All his letters to all the different churches. A man who killed Jewish people, who killed the followers of Jesus. Yo, it hits me hard thinking of that. If you think Peter, who, the first thing people go, yeah, um, he denied Jesus 3 times. Okay, but he also preached the first sermon at Pentecost, where 3,000 people gave their lives to Christ. That's the thing of these people. Deborah was the prophetess. You think Joseph in the Old Testament, and you think, yeah, he laid out dreams, and it was the baker, and was it the winemaker, or yeah. But my mind is all over the word. I need to sit down and think of these things. But he was in prison with them, imprisoned with them, but now he laid out the dreams, and he came out of prison again. But his brothers threw him in a pit to kill him, and then they still thought of an opportunity to make some money off him and sell him. And in the end of the day of everything, what happened? He forgave them for what they did to him. But that Joseph's story over here is for me one of the best examples of how God, he makes everything work out for the good of those who love him and are called according to his purpose. Because was it not for the brother selling him off, he never would have ended up anywhere near Potiphar. And his firm faith and service to the Lord that brought him up through the ranks. That God sent him ahead to make sure his family is okay as well. And that he had the heart, and God put it in his heart to forgive them for what happened, for what they did, what they tried to do with him. And here he is. They still laughed off his dream. And I'm sitting here and I'm thinking this morning, what is it? What is it about me? What is it about you? Often a problem that I realize come in when this sort of thinking comes on, what is it about me, is that a lot of people tend to, I myself have been there, revert to what stays behind when I leave, what remains here when I'm no longer here. And I've heard a great many people say, oh no, they want to leave this legacy, or they want to leave this or that behind. And the interesting thing for me is that what happens is the fact that this is the stuff that's pointed out. My heart saddens when these things have nothing to do with the Lord. Even more so when it is children of God. Like, and I mean, people on fire for Jesus, and they want to leave money behind. They want to be remembered as the successful businessman, but nowhere the Lord is mentioned in that. You can be a businessman for God because the kingdom still needs financing. It doesn't matter which area your calling is or how you operate. If God is first in your life, I get saddened with it. And I think I've said time and time again that if when my time comes to an end and I leave this earthly place to take my rightful place whew, with Jesus and my Father in heaven, I've said many a times that I don't care if people remember me. I don't even care if people remember my name. But if they should, if it does happen and people think of me, what is it that they would remember? I want them to remember there was a guy like David. There was a guy that was after God's heart. There was a guy that stood up in the face of adversity for Jesus. There's a man whose faith you couldn't bend and you'll never break. That's the sort of path I'm trying to get on. And that's why I'm so rough and hard with myself. And I realize that pours outside often where it seems I feel very harsh on people around me as well. But I know what I'm aiming towards. And it's not so that people would remember that. Not at all. That's the thing. I'm doing it to be that person for God in this world that so desperately needs those type of people. Like David's dancing, like David's, I want to say, crazy level of faith and belief and knowing who God is, that he can strike down this massive giant in front of him. For me, it's all these things that stand out. It touches, these things that stand out, it touches for me on the calling that each person has on their life. David was there to be a leader. So what happened? He led. He led by example. Can't tell people to step out in faith if you don't step out in faith. And boy, did David step out in faith, pitching up 5 pebbles and a sling to a giant. And then it comes with your obedience to the Lord. And even in the toughest of times, these people all stood strong, firm in their faith in the Lord. And you know what the fascinating thing is here? God came through every single time. The Bible is filled with moments where God just came through every single time. And then I think how easily we lose faith today. And what causes sometimes a stop, sometimes a pause, sometimes a complete throwaway of that which we can achieve and do when we just do what we're supposed to for the Lord. Excuse my oog hier 'n bietjie. When I see these videos on social medias and stuff like that about people telling us stories about this is why they're not a Christian anymore, and this and that person, and this and that happened, and these things, and I look at these things sometimes, and I think, I get my heart saddens for these people. I hurt a lot when I hear stuff of this actually happening. But on the other side as well, I sit and I think that's pathetic. Because there was no, oppervlakkig, man. Dit was oppervlakkig dan gewees as jy so vinnig kan wegdraai van die Here af. It feels to me in moments like that, when I see videos like that, I think, yes, it doesn't look like there was a deep connection with the Lord to begin with, and that's why there were no roots. It was those seeds that the Bible talks of that didn't fall on the good soil. That's what happens there. And then I get sad, because it's sad that it happens and these people get lost. It's sad that these people never got the right people around them. But there's so many different things that our decisions bring us to those places where that happens. If you decide to isolate yourself, you're making your own problem. If you understand what I'm saying. But it's pathetic for me how easily we can turn away from the Lord after all He's done for us. For me. For you. I feel it's time for us to dig deep, stand firm. Stand sterk, man. Find whatever it is that your calling is, because in that is going to be that thing that's going to be remembered. That thing you sometimes don't even have to, you just need to action it. You just need to let it out. That's oftentimes what I found what happens. Man, you must ask people when I start going on about David, and I think you can pick it up on this message again as well, and you've had it in previous messages. Don't get me started on David. I love David. I love the story of David, who he was, who the Bible describes him to be, all the stories, even the ones waar hy bietjie droog gemaak het, even those. But it's time for us to do what God has called us to do. You dance for the Lord if that's what your heart says you want to do or you need to do. You stand up against that giant if you feel courageous, even when nobody else is standing up. Put down that staff and part that water. If you are called to lead the people, we as children of the Lord, we look differently to the world, or at least we're supposed to. The Bible says we'll look different, probably even weird, and I don't mind. I love looking weird for the Lord. I love looking like a fool for the Lord. Looking like a fool for the Lord is one of the best ways for me personally, I found, that destroys the me that needs to die to myself daily so I can pick up my cross and follow Jesus. So I want to tell you this morning, go on. Dance like David danced. Forgive your family for trying to kill you like Joseph. Risk your life for God's people. If that is what your heart tells you, if that is what God tells you to do, just go ahead and do it. What is it about you that stands out? Oh man, I'm looking forward to seeing great, big, massive lights in the world start shining for people just standing out like a Noah, like a Moses, like a David, like an Esther and a Ruth, like a Peter, like a Paul. What is it about you?